unity cannot be shattered by evil. Our bonds cannot be broken by violence. And though we feel such great anger at the senseless murder of our fellow citizens, it is our love that defines us today and always will, forever.
That was President Donald Trump condemning last night's horrific shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada, now the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. Good evening and welcome to Metro Focus. I'm Jenna Flanagan. At least 58 people were killed and 500 more injured after a gunman opened fire on an outdoor country music festival on the Las Vegas Strip. Officials say the shooter, 64-year-old Stephen Paddock, fired on the crowd from his 32nd floor hotel room across the street from the concert. He was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, surrounded by as many as 10 guns. The president will travel to Vegas on Wednesday to meet with law enforcement, first responders, and the families of the victims. We'll continue to monitor this developing story and bring you the latest as it unfolds. Reeling from Monster Storm Irma and Hurricane Maria, Puerto Rico is still struggling to get back on its feet. With 55% of the territory's population still struggling to find clean drinking water, island dwellers eagerly await the calm after the storm. In the midst of bringing relief to Puerto Rico, President Trump this weekend made his way to Liberty National Golf Club in New Jersey, where he dedicated the winning trophy to hurricane victims. But not everyone was touched by the gesture, as someone not so eloquently yelled out, "The president doesn't care about Puerto Rico."
We're going to dedicate this trophy to all those people that love you so much.
Joining me now to discuss the president's relief efforts, as well as other news that made headlines this weekend, is Michael Grimm. You may remember him as the Staten Island representative who resigned from Congress in 2014 after receiving an 8-month sentence for tax fraud. But he's back with some big news, having just announced yesterday that he will be running for his old congressional seat. Michael Grimm joins me now. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So there's a lot of news that we have to cover. And first, I do want to start with the tragedy in Las Vegas.
Sure.
Your take on what has transpired?
It's sickening. I mean, I think there's even words for this. And I've been through combat with the Marine Corps, okay? And I worked Flight 800 TWA as an FBI agent. Carnage like this in our country, I don't know what's wrong. And I say my prayers regularly, and I ask, when is this gonna end? Why is there so much anger in people, and what has changed? I don't remember this when I was growing up.
I think, unfortunately, a lot of us as adults don't. However, I have noticed this morning so quickly that the conversation on Twitter, as it always does, is turning very quickly to what we can do at the state and federal level to prevent this kind of violence. And I'm wondering if any of this has given you pause or new thoughts about gun control in this country.
Well, you know, again, I know it always comes back to that whenever we have a tragedy like this, and I understand that. I mean, these are issues that are very visceral, and it affects every single person that sees it. But I will bet you that a lot of these guns are illegal to begin with. So adding more laws is probably not going to be effective. I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is enforcement and doing a better job with the laws that we actually have. That's one. Number two, there is a lot of mental illness in the United States, and I don't think we do a good job of identifying it. I don't think we do a good job of dealing with it. I think that's really the heart of the problem. We have to attack the real problem. The problem is that this person, this maniac, and I don't know, probably has a mental disease, because a normal person could never, ever do something like this. But that's the issue. It's the person. It's not necessarily the illegal gun that he may have used or the gun that he used. It's the person, and we do not do a good job of identifying people with these illnesses or taking care of them.
Well, there still is some confusion or talk as to where the legality of the arms that he may or may not have had stood. I'm sure, as you know, Nevada is an open carry state, and I believe assault rifles and machine guns are actually legal if you have a permit to have them, if they're registered. So that becomes an issue. But then secondly, is maybe the next step then determining whether or not people who are determined to have mental illness have access to guns at all?
Well, no, there's no question that someone that has a mental illness should not have access to weapons. I don't think anyone, Republican or Democrat, would dispute that. But again, I think the heart of the issue is it's people kill people, not guns. And if we got rid of law-abiding citizens' guns, you'd only be left with people that want to do harm and want to flout the law and are going to get illegal guns anyway. So I just, again, I really, in my heart, and it's not a political issue for me.
Oh, I understand it's not a political issue for you,
I really believe that that's not the answer.
at
As
the
someone
same
that carried a
time-
gun for over 20 years.
Yeah, but at the same time,
in
there
all 50
are
states.
people at home who are screaming that this person didn't have a criminal history at all. This was completely unforeseen. There's no law that is on the books that could have been enforced to have prevented this.
No, absolutely, but there's also been so many tragedies now with people using their cars, vans, trucks, kitchen knives. The point is, if someone wants to hurt someone, if there's a person out there that wants to do massive carnage, they will do so, regardless of whether you ban guns or not. And that's why I think it's just a failing argument. It's not addressing the issue. The issue is, why do we have so many people with this hatred in their heart that, putting aside terrorism, that speaks in and of itself.
And that was determined not to be the case
Right.
here.
So that's why I'm putting that on the side. But there are people that have this anger and hatred in their heart that act upon it. That's one. There's just those that legitimately have mental disease and they don't even know what they're doing, and we have to deal with that. But again, I believe if there was not one gun on the face of the earth, it still would not solve the problem, because as you can see all through Europe, whether they're driving trucks through massive crowds or whether they're using knives or machetes, the violence will continue with any weapon of choice. It's not about removing the gun. It's about dealing with, why are these people causing this carnage in the first place?
If it's even possible to table that issue, and that's such a big issue that we'll be talking about for a while, I want to turn to the other ongoing issue for the country, and that is dealing or helping Puerto Rico. What's your take on the response, the relief response that we've seen?
Well, I think it's as best as could be. Now, you have to understand, I was the congressman during Superstorm Sandy, and I've lived through it, and I've seen just how devastating it is. But as hard as it was for New York City, because New York City was not prepared for that. New York City is not an area that deals with hurricanes and tornadoes and all of those different things like other areas of our country. Texas, I think, was better prepared than we were, for example, even Florida. And they've just gone through this. What we've seen in Puerto Rico is unprecedented. The damage is unprecedented. With having the power grid out, cell towers down, no one can communicate. This is probably one of the most difficult hurricanes, and the response will be the most difficult the United States has ever faced, in my opinion. And I think because it's so unprecedented, and because it's coming after, we can't ignore the fact Texas just got hit, Florida just got hit. There were 2 hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico. So the government does have limitations. There's only so much they can do, and they can only move so quickly. I saw that, and I was disappointed during Sandy that we didn't move faster than we did. I think there was some politics at play there. Here, I don't see any politics at all. I think that FEMA is stretched as far as they can go. I think you have the National Guard stretched. I think you have the administration, in my opinion, has been very good, very responsive. I think the president absolutely loves Puerto Rico, and I think he understands that these people need all the help they can get, and I believe he's doing everything he can.
Okay. Again, now on to a third issue that is very important, I believe, to the district you used to represent, and that's the opioid crisis. How have you seen that explode and affect people who you were representing?
Okay, it is, first of all, Staten Island is ground zero. It has overcome the island. It's an epidemic. Let's make no mistake about that. It is tearing apart families, friends, neighbors. It affects every single person on Staten Island in every way. The crime rate goes up because addicts need to do bad things to get money to buy their drugs. So whether it's kids middle-aged people overdoses are on the rise every day. The only reason that the death toll is not continuing to rise at the same rate it was is because now we are able, a lot of the police and other people in these neighborhoods are carrying around the antidote to save someone's life, to give them that shot.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason that we haven't been losing more and more people. But the overdose rate is increasing. We have to get ahead of this epidemic. It's not easy. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying I have all of the answers. But with the right leadership, I really do believe we can come up with a comprehensive, effective plan. One of the things that I personally would like to do, because the president has spoken about this as a national epidemic.
Yes.
And this is, I know for a fact, it is near and dear to his heart, because he knows this, if we don't get a handle on this, this will destroy our country.
I want to talk to you about why you're here. And that's because you've recently announced that you're going to be running for Congress again to represent Staten Island. I believe it's New York's 11th district?
It is. That's
I
very
know
good.
my congressional district.
It used to be 13 when I was first elected,
Yeah.
and after redistricting, it became the 11th.
All right, so why do you want to be the congressman again?
The same exact reason that I first ran. It's the same reason I joined the Marine Corps. I left college, enlisted. I volunteered for combat. It's the same reason that I left Wall Street and became an agent for the FBI. I love this country with all my heart. I would give my life for this country. And I believe that my best way to serve this country is to serve the people of the 11th Congressional District.
All right, well, listen, we wish you all the best luck, and definitely come back and let us know how things go as the campaign rolls on. We'll be looking forward to 2018, as everyone will be.
Thank you so much, and I will.
Thank you.